Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on your time zone. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Audrey Butlett-Swenson, and I am the Liaison Librarian to the College of Management Technology. Maybe my face looks familiar if you've gone to some other webinars with me or if you've been at the same residency where I was teaching at. So today we're going to talk about researching for theory, because that can be really, really tricky. Sometimes it's not a straightforward path, and I think I picked an example theory that'll be a good example of that, but we'll still be able to kind of resolve it. Hopefully I have time at the end. I don't think it'll go the whole hour. We'll see. Depends on how many questions you guys have. You'll probably have great questions along the way. I'll try and save some time at the end if somebody wants me to do an example of a theory or research topic that they're doing and trying to find a relevant theory. So as the webinar goes on today, I will try and keep an eye on the questions box. Hopefully everybody can hear me and see my screen okay. If somebody could just type into the questions box and just let me know, that would be very, very helpful. Also, this will be recorded for anybody who registered, so it doesn't matter if you're here or if you have a buddy that's in their class with you that registered, but they're busy, they can't make it. Everybody will get a link to the recording. There will also be, the recording will also be linked on our webinars archive page, so I'll show you where that is as well. Excellent. Thank you for letting me know that you could hear me and see me. It's appreciated. So I will go ahead and turn off my screen because I'm not the most interesting part of today's webinar. At least I'd like to think that I'm not. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. And let's go ahead and dip into the agenda. So I'm not going to spend too much time on library resources, kind of just an overview of how to get help. And then we're going to dive right in. If you want more help with general research or using the databases, we have other webinars that would be really, really great for that, or general instruction on our website, or again, you can contact the library and I'll show you how to do that as well. We're going to do some search examples, look for theories and articles, theory and dissertations, and theory in the encyclopedia. And I'll show you how to do each one of those. Now, if you have questions along the way, again, I will try and keep an eye on the questions box. Sometimes it can get kind of distracting for me going back and forth, but I will definitely keep an eye on it. If you need me to repeat something or slow down, please do put that in the questions box, and I'll keep that in consideration while I'm presenting. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I don't see any questions, just comments helping me, letting me know that you guys could hear me and see me, which is great. So thanks again for doing that. So heading out of the PowerPoint. So hopefully many of you have already been to the Walden Library homepage, or just the library in general. First, I wanted to point out that you can contact the library for help. So you'll click on the Ask a Librarian button in the upper right-hand corner. So I'm assuming many of you are doctoral students. There might be a couple of master's or undergraduate students who are just curious. But just know that any level of program, you can email, chat, and voicemail. If you are a doctoral student, if you are struggling with researching, again, your problem statement, looking for articles on your topic, looking for theory, there could be all sorts of different things that you're trying to research as far as your lit review or your problem statement or a proposal. It could be all over the board. So do know that you can come and make an appointment with me, or maybe, if your topic kind of goes over into health sciences or education, you can always speak with another liaison too. It doesn't have to just be me. But you'll find me under the College of Management Technology, and then my calendar will be available. And if you hadn't seen this note yet, just know that we're switching our software for appointments. So we're trying to get that fleshed out, and hopefully new appointments will be available November 1st. I'm going to try and get that updated as fast as I can once the software gets initiated. But if you don't see anything and you really want to try and make an appointment with me before the 1st or after the 1st, but nothing's popped up yet, feel free to email me directly or email the library and just say, hey, I'd really like to make an appointment with the Business and Management IT librarian, and they'll forward your request to me, and then we can work one-on-one. So hopefully there aren't any questions about that. All right, so the next thing I want to point out is the subject research homepages that we have. And so I'm going to take you to the business and management research homepage, but if you happen to be ISIT, you can certainly go into the ISIT. It's going to have very similar resources in it. So business and management. And the reason I'm taking you here is, first of all, there's a list of short data, or a list of databases that we can work with, and I'm going to demo a search in Business Source Complete. And so before we even dig into that, though, I'm going to show you the research help section we have at the bottom here. So I'm going to open up the business theory guide that I made, and it's going to show some of the information that we're going to go over in today's webinar. I'm not going to work from the guide. I just want you guys to know where it is and that it's available to you. So if you go under theories and theorists, it gives you, basically these will link you into the business theory guide, or will take you to the resources within them. And then the last thing I'm going to have you do is, let's see, we got the learn more about business theories and theorists. And that's going to open up the business theory guide. So a lot of the information, like I said, that we're covering today will be found in here. If anybody wants me to walk through how I got here, again, please do put that in the questions box. I know that's a lot of clicking. So from here, one of the things that I generally suggest students try is, I'm going to scroll way down here. So I made a dummy list, or an Excel spreadsheet, that you guys can use to keep track of your theories if you want to. It is not required. So I have it listed right here. I've already opened it up to make life a little easier, but basically it's just a place where you can store the name of the theory, the seminal author, maybe if you have the citation for it, times you found it in the literature, how the theory was used, and then how many times that work cited, the seminal author was cited since it's been published. And these are just notes for your reference. These aren't things that are required by any means, but I think it might be helpful to keep track of that, especially when you're just starting out and trying to figure out what theory might work best for your research topic. Now, if you do have questions about that, there should be, back in that same section, sorry, I'm clicking back and forth here. So Dr. Reggie Taylor has a webinar that he's done, which is, I think it was theory alignment or framework alignment, and that's linked under the Theories and Theorists tab on the Business and Management Research homepage. And that gives some really great guidance on how that works. As a librarian, I'm not here to tell you which one to choose. I'm just here to help you find information on those theories, and then more articles discussing those or using those theories. But if you're, I'm always happy to help you and point you in the right direction. So if you're not sure, don't be afraid to ask. We're happy to say, hey, that's a good faculty question, or maybe you could reach out to the Center for Research Quality, or other resources that might be of use to you. So don't be shy about asking questions. That's what we're here for. All right, so the reason I opened up, and I already closed it. Of course I did. All right, let's open that one more time. So the reason I'm gonna keep that open this time is when we go back to the database, and I'm gonna go ahead and open up Business Source Complete. And so when you're researching theory, you don't have to just use Business Source Complete. You're going to use all the different databases looking for articles on your topic using a particular theory. It's not just going to be one. I tend to demo Business Source Complete because I think the search interface is the easiest one to look at, especially when you're just figuring out, or if I'm showing somebody how to use it efficiently, I think it's the most clear. So the research topic that I had chosen here, I think, was employee turnover, because this is such a popular topic. And I made some notes, and like I said, this might go, there's little steps in here that hopefully I've noted all of them, but you'll notice that it's not always a straight line, and it can be confusing even for the librarian. So just keep that in mind. But again, if you have questions along the way, just let me know. All right, so the thing I'm going to do next is click on peer-reviewed scholarly journals and hit search. Great. All right, so we've got a search results list of like 3,300. That is a lot, and that's fine. You know, what you could do in here is if you wanted to narrow this down by industry or a geographic location or a demographic, that could help you. For this webinar, all I'm going to show you is where you're going to find the theories in the articles themselves. So the tricky part about these searches, or when you're looking for these articles, is that the theory isn't always indexed as the subject terms. You'll see the subject terms here. And it's not always discussed in the author supplied abstract. So I'm just going to open this first article and you'll see what I mean. So here's the author supplied abstract that the author provides the publisher, which again turns over to the databases and gets entered. So sometimes, you know, the authors will add whatever theory they're using to this abstract. Sometimes they don't. And if they don't, that doesn't mean that they're not using a theory or concept. It just means that it's not listed in there. And I'll show you another search after we kind of sift through some of these articles to look for theories. But I just want to point that out, that the database is really only looking through, unless that article is in HTML, it's only looking at the subject terms, the author supplied keywords, and the abstract information, or any of the abstract information you see here, but especially this content. So I'm going to go ahead and open up one of these articles. Great. Awesome. So you'll have your abstract, your introduction. I mean, the abstract's not always on there, but you'll definitely have an introduction section. The introduction section, or sometimes it'll be labeled as lit review, is definitely going to be your area to reference immediately to figure out what theory they're using. So I'm just doing a page search, so Control F if you have a PC, and then if you have a Mac, I don't know what that symbol is, but basically it's the same thing, Control F with it looks like it's like something that was on a rotary phone, but I can't think of what that's called. If anybody can remember, put it in the questions box and I'll bring it up. But so you can search by theory, or if you want to type in theorist or framework, any term to help you sift through the document a little faster. So in this case, you know, keep an eye on, is this a theory that they're using, or is it just a theory that they're comparing? Are they talking about a theory they're not using, and for why they're not using it? So, you know, what you can do is scroll through here like I've done. And so there's 17 mentions of theory. So the first one they have here is homosocial reproduction theory. So what you could do is copy that and then put it in your spreadsheet. And you know, you can come back to that and say, after you've read a little bit about it in this introduction section, like what is it about? How is it relevant to this person's research? And how is it relevant to turnover? If that's your topic, of course, this is all dependent on your topic. So there's quite a bit in here that they've discussed. So once you've kind of figured out if this is something of interest to you, or if you just kind of want to keep a list going, the next thing you could do, and oftentimes what they'll do, is they'll give you the seminal author. Now this particular article didn't, and that's normal. I mean, they're not always going to do that. A lot of times they'll pick an article that's a little bit newer that references that theory and gives context as to why that theory is relevant to that research topic. So keep that in mind while you're looking through here. Again, generally the theory information is going to be in the introduction, but you might also find it in the research methods section too, depending on how here's their conceptual framework, how they've designed it. So not everybody's going to label it exactly the same way, although I think this search and find feature that you can use in the browser, or if you download the article in Adobe, you can do the same thing. Search and find is great because it saves you a lot of time. The only time that might not work, this search and find function, is if it's a really old article that's been scanned in. That search and find function might not work as well because it's an image as opposed to like a text document. Oh, that's a great question. A seminal author mean? What does a seminal author mean? Great question. So the seminal author is or could be a couple, I suppose. It doesn't just have to be one, but the seminal author is who originally published that theory. And I should give a little bit more context to that. So, so if you've heard of like Herzberg, motivation theory, that is definitely a guy. So he would be the seminal author there. And then, over the course of time, people might take that theory and alter it a little bit, and it might get rebranded and change names. So it's important to know who the seminal author is. So the original theorist, and what that actual citation was. Was it a book that they published? Was it an article they published? And I'll do another, I'm going to open up a couple more articles, but the last one I'm going to open up, I'm going to grab the theory that they're using, and we're going to do a little search in the encyclopedias, and we're going to search in the dissertations database and Google Scholar. So then it gives you an idea of like, well, how do I actually track down the seminal author, and then kind of look at the theory over time, and how do I look for articles using that theory related to your topic? And you're very, very welcome. I'm happy to cover any questions you guys have. So, all right, so we've looked at this one article. Let's move on. I think I'll grab one more just as a reference here. And I like the ones that are in HTML because that makes my life a little bit easier as far as searching. But let's go ahead and open this one too. I kind of looked at them earlier today just to remind myself what was in them. Every time I do this webinar, I have to rerun the search because the results change, right? So I have to make sure that I'm guiding you guys through the right content. So some articles are going to have a really a much longer theories list, or give you way more context for theories in that area. And this is just one of those articles. I just think that's interesting when you're looking through them. Like maybe they're going to be talking about six different theories or something, give you a lot of context over them. So I'm just going to scroll down, and maybe I already passed it. Okay. So here's one of the theories they listed, and the only reason I scrolled down to this because it happens to be a header. But if you search through this document, I'm sure we'd find theory, if I spell it right. There we go. We see theory 47 times. That's a lot. So, I mean, there could be, they've got expectancy theory here. They're giving you context for other theories, image theory. So this might give you some more context as to the different theories in your field. Again, you could take, if you've had one that was of interest, I don't know if image theory is even relevant. It's one of those things where you would definitely have to spend time reading the article, not necessarily the whole article, but just definitely the introduction and the literature review to figure out how is this working? How are they going to use it? What's the context? So then, you could come over here and say, Smith, and, I was searching when I was looking through these articles, I saw it 5 times. How did they use it? And that's up to you, how you want to explain it, put it in here. Again, this is not required at all. It just, sometimes I have questions from students as far as my appointments go, looking for theory, and it can be so time consuming to look through all this content. And so trying to keep it straight can be kind of helpful. And that's the one way I thought of doing it, was just keeping a spreadsheet. So if you guys have another way of doing it, awesome, that is totally great. This is just a dummy, a dummy example. So I'm gonna head back to that search results list. As I promised, I'm gonna open up, I'm gonna actually just open up the HTML. So in this particular article, they are talking about social identity theory and psychological contract theory. And you've noticed that it's discussed in here, release theory is discussed 12 times. You could flip through and see, well, where are they discussing more about social identity theory? So let's see what else they have about social identity theory. Maybe that seems kind of interesting. All right. So this is probably a really good example. So reading about this, you'll see it listed here. And what I generally tell students is try and keep an eye out for the citations. the in-text citation to give you an idea of, and these are really odd, this must not be APA, who the seminal author is or who's been talking about this theory over a certain amount of time. I spent some time this morning just double checking who the seminal author is for this particular theory. And so you'll notice that I'm not going to say that name correctly, so I'm not even going to try. But this author is the seminal author for, or the theorist here for that theory. But it did change over time. So I'll kind of walk through how you can kind of figure that out. One of my favorite things to use for looking for context for a theory is our encyclopedias, and I'll walk you through that too. But before I do, I want to show you something in the databases. Okay, so I'm going to borrow social identity theory, and that's going to be the theory that we've used. But if you want to scroll down, you'll see that some of these citations are listed, and you'll just go down to their references. And sorry if I'm making anybody dizzy. I just don't want to do it really slow so you guys are bored. All right, so you're going to take a look at the references listed here. So they've got 3 different citations from that same author. Sorry, that last piece keeps popping up here. So 1974, 1986, and 2004. So it's one of those things where, well, is 1974 the seminal work where he initially published on social identity? Is the one from 1986 or the one from probably not 2004, but it can be helpful to kind of take a look at those older citations and copy and paste them in there. So if you have what you think is the oldest citation for, we'll say social identity theory. And so when I'm walking through this, I've done this demo in the past, or I've walked through it with students, and I always tell them, I'm looking at this for 15 to 45 minutes, depending on how much buffer time I've been given from you guys, what theory you've given me to go research. So it's really up to you to go find that seminal work and figure out how it's progressed over time. So let's head back to the Walden Library. I'm going to head back to the home page. And what we're going to do next, oh, you know what? I was going to run a search on theory just so you guys could see what happens when you limit it. So before I even open up the encyclopedia, sorry, I wanted to make sure I did this. If you are getting sick of having to sift through the results, so you just want to look at the articles that are discussing theory, or maybe you could say framework or model. I guess we could do that too. So let's go ahead and run that search. So that dropped our search by about 2,200. And like I said earlier, this can be helpful, and it also can be kind of a roadblock. Again, because the theory itself isn't always mentioned by the author, and it's not something that's indexed all the time. And when I say indexed, you'll see in the subject terms here, leader membership or leader member exchange theory pops up. So that means that article has been indexed with that subject term, but not all of them have. And so the rest of these probably have some kind of author notation in their abstract about theory, right? So psychological contract theory, social identity theory, there it is again. Oh, it's the same one. There you go. At least you get the point. So, if you do put in theory, that is going to limit your results, and that could be helpful or it could be a hindrance depending on what you're looking for. Now, if you just wanted to see how many of these use that theory, we're down to 11. And that's specifically because the articles didn't discuss it in the abstract or the subject terms in the databases. So what we're going to do is grab this same search and search for it in Google Scholar. But before I even do that, again, I'm going to go back to the encyclopedias. But I just wanted to show you how fast searching for theory can limit your results, or a specific theory can limit your results in the databases, which is not a bad thing, but it can be disheartening, I think, sometimes for students when they're looking for more literature. So back to the library homepage, if you click on more resources, And I'll just take a quick sip of water just in case you guys need a second to catch up. Okay, so from more resources, you're going to click on encyclopedias, handbooks, and dictionaries. And then you're going to click on Sage Knowledge. So Sage Knowledge contains encyclopedia entries and handbooks, and this can be really helpful for concepts, theories, anything that you want more background information on. So Sage Knowledge. And I'm going to borrow that same oops, there we go. Whoops. I must have hit that insert button. All right. So I'm going to paste in the title of that theory. I've put it in quotation marks, and I should have explained what that does in the database as well, but it's same concept here or in the database. I mean, they're both databases, but what you can do is use those quotation marks to search that exact phrase. So don't break it apart and don't put it in a different order. That's what you're telling the database to do. So you're going to get more exact results. Again, this is something that can help you find more relevant content, but it can also kill your search really fast. So if you just want to see how much is out there in general, keep the quotation marks off. If you're looking for something specific, go ahead and try the quotation marks and see what you get. So I'm searching for social identity theory. Great. So it looks like we have at least 2 different entries. Awesome. That's what I was hoping for. We're going to click on that first one. Great. So it gives you a little bit of background information about what's in here, and then an introduction to that theory, and then the origins of that theory. And if you should scroll up, and I thought they usually give you an outline of what's on this page, but there is a lot. Oh, there it is. There we go. So it'll give you a little bit more information about what's going on with this theory. So you can kind of scroll through here and go a little bit faster, but for this, demo, we're just going to worry about the origins. So we found the author again. Again, I'm not going to ruin his last name, but just know that it looks like they have some older citations here, a little bit older than the one we had before, so 1974 here. And then if you scroll down, they have another one, 1971. And then if you scroll down, you'll see that you have several more listed here. So it's up to you guys as students to come in here and researchers, I should say, researchers is come in here, get context for the origins of that theory, figure out which article or book he published that first talked about it, and then you can come and grab that citation. And of course, you may or may not end up using it as an actual citation in your lit review, but it's just good to have and good to have context for. So if we scroll all the way down, we've got a pretty good list of his work, which is awesome. So dating back all the way to 1969, is it this 1969 article? Is it 1974? Where do we go, right? So again, that would be probably discussed in that origins of the theory. But another thing you can do is look at completed dissertations, and we can learn a little bit more there because they've already done some of that legwork. So it looks like there's a request to come back to the encyclopedias or explain how I got to the encyclopedias, and I will walk through that one more time. So let's open up the library homepage again. We're going to click on more resources, and I'll go slowly again on that because I know, again, I know where all the buttons are, so it's easy for me to click through it. So the next thing you're going to do is click on encyclopedias, handbooks, and dictionaries, and then Sage Knowledge. And before you even open that up, if you're confused as to which one we used, just keep in mind when you're looking at this later on that Sage Research Methods is really great for methodology. That's what that database is for. So I always think about it as like Sage Knowledge. I can just know anything about anything. And then Sage Research Methods is very specific to methodology. So we're going to use Sage Knowledge. And then we're going to type in the theory again and just hit search. Something I should point out, not every theory is going to be in here. And I know that's kind of frustrating, but if it's something where the context for that theory isn't super clear, make an appointment with me or email the library, and we'll do our best to help you track down, like, where's the origin of that theory? How did it evolve over time? Like, give you some context to research that. We're happy to do that. Sometimes students will pick a brand new theory, which is fine, but there might not be as much research out there using that theory, which can be a struggle when you're trying to discuss it in your lit review. Or it's a theory from the 90s, but it was only popular for 5 or 6 years, and then people used a alternative form of that theory that somebody had altered it a little bit. So there's a lot of things that could be going on with your theory. Oh, yep. So a student typed in a theory that they would like me to try. So I will use that as my demo. We should have plenty of time. So I will keep my eye on that, and I will come back to it once I do an example. Because sometimes I can demo somebody else's theory and do a straight line, kind of like I'm doing right now, where it's like, I found it. Here's information. Here's the context. Here's how we can find more articles on that or on our topic with that theory. And sometimes it requires a lot more digging. So I will certainly use that theory as an example, running through the search the second time. So we've found it in the encyclopedia. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to go back to the home page, and then we're going to look at dissertations. And I'll give you guys just a moment to figure out, if you want me to go, actually, let's go back one more time, because I know you guys were probably looking at the last page. So back at the library homepage, you're going to click on the dissertations button. And then we're going to look at Walden specifically, but you are more than welcome to branch out and use the global database. So this is going to show you dissertations from all over the world, which can be really, really helpful because you want to see, well, how many people have used this theory on this topic from everywhere, right? But the reason I'm going to use the Walden specific dissertations database is you're still going to get that context for, how did that theory evolve over the time, but you'll also get to see how they incorporated that theory into their research based off of a rubric that might be relevant to you. And some of these, you might find, I was looking earlier, and there might be some dissertations in other program areas that are using your theory, and that's fine. You're just there to look at the references and figure out more context. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up, and I'm going to run, I think I ran the same search in here. I'm just going to take a look at my notes because I want to make sure I'm not driving you guys crazy with me flipping through these pages too much. Okay, so actually we're just going to do the theory. And then the next thing I'm going to do is limit to the last 5 years. Now, if you wanted to make this more specific, you could say turnover, but for right now, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to worry about the theory. Okay. So you could come in here and look through these dissertations. And again, some of these are going to be outside of business and IT. And that's not a problem. It's just one of those things that, you can look at their references and grab what you need to grab and move on. If you want to narrow it by degree, you can certainly do that. And the one that I had chosen is not in here. So let's just turn over. If it's going to rerun my search, it's not. Let's try it again. Okay. Well, the database is playing tricks on me. It's probably because I was in the other database, but that's fine. What we can do from here is open up the full text of the dissertation. Right. And so this one was in the College of Business or social and behavior sciences. It'll usually tell you what it was for, public policy. That's fine. The only difference is, so if you're in a doctoral program, if you're DIT or DBA, when you're looking at the table of contents, it's set up just a little bit differently than, if you're in a doctoral program. It'll be a little different than your rubric. So you could look at their section on theoretical framework, and then in their lit review section, they might have a section specifically on that theory. So you could start by looking at page 17. And then I have already forgotten where the other page was, but hopefully I'm not making you guys dizzy. And it's not scrolling all the way to the bottom, which means I did not open the full text. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to answer the question that just popped in a second, after I go to page 17. And hopefully not made all of you motion sick. Okay, so here the student's talking about, or I guess Dr. Now at this point is talking about the 3 different theories that they've used. I don't see the citation for, here we go. Talking about social identity. It doesn't look like they have a ton of citations for the social identity theory, but that's okay. It could be, it looks like they've used an acronym. So I would probably have to look through this a little bit closer to figure out what the context was. And then as far as the actual theory itself, what page was that on? 32. All right. And hopefully this helps answer the question that came into the questions box. So the question was, so if the theory has multiple authors, or it's not clear, or I'm assuming if it's not clear who you should be citing, who do you pick? I think that really depends on what you're researching. And then, if you're not sure which one to choose, I would ask your faculty member, because they're going to be able to give you more context for that than I would ever be able to. But if you are really having a hard time figuring out how these are related, or maybe researching them a little bit more specifically, I would make an appointment with me and we could talk about it, because it's not always a straight line, and it is just crazy sometimes. So, we're happy to untangle that as much as we can. Looks like there's another question. Okay. Good question. So is it that you choose oldest reference to the theory, or all the sightings of the authors? So generally it's good to have context for the seminal author is, because that gives you an origin of the theory. And then when you're coming in here talking about the theory related to your theory, you're going to be using your articles. And I'll get to that in just a moment when we search on Google Scholar. So some of them might be a little older still too. I mean, that's understood. Some of the theory information it can be pretty old. So, I think your faculty members understand that. But that's why I'm having you guys come in here and take a look, because that you get context for, well, how much of the information do I need to have for the origin of the theory? And then how much information do I need to have of the theory related to my research topic? So that's why I suggest I look at the Walden dissertations or doc studies, so that you get more context, because that's not always, you're looking at somebody else's research and you're reading about how they use the theory, and that's going to be different than the way you guys have rubrics, right? You have a specific rubric, and there's going to be different requirements for you. So that's why I always tell students, come in, look at the Walden specific ones first, then go look at the dissertations global, or the global dissertations database, so you get a feel of how many other doctors or alumni or students at that point, I suppose, research this topic and use that theory. And we'll do the same thing in Google Scholar, although the context is just a little bit different. But I want you guys to have the option to look at both, because it's important. All right, so let's give Google Scholar a try here. All right, so I'm gonna, oh, right, there was a theory. in here. Oh, you know what? Let's do social identity theory, and then I'll come back to that theory in the questions box. I just want to make sure we have plenty of time. So, social identity theory. Let's just figure out how much is out there on that specific theory. So one of the tricky things about searching in Google Scholar, hopefully, okay, it looks like there's a question on how I got here. So I don't know if you want me to show you how I got to Google Scholar. If that's where you would like me to show you how I got there, please let me know and then I'll show you that. If it was for the dissertation search, let me know that too, and I'd be happy to walk through that again. So Google Scholar is just scholar.google.com. For those of you who haven't used it before, it's like academic Google, except maybe not, it's not as strict as the databases. So it's going to give you all sorts of content. It's going to give you books and non-peer-reviewed content and dissertations, and there is peer-reviewed content in here, but it's not, there's no way to limit it to peer review literature. So how I got here is just scholar.google.com, and I can type that in here. And not hit enter, but I'll just type it in just a moment. So it's scholar.google.com. And then once I got in here, I just typed in social identity theory and hit search. Okay. So we've got about 110,000 results. That's a lot. So the other thing that can happen in here, and I think happens pretty often, or more often than I think it does, is that there might be more than one theory with the same name, which is also bananas. I don't know why people don't Google that before they name something, but I suppose the older theories, there wasn't Google, so you can only do what you can do. So what you could do is if you wanted to look at the history of this particular theory, we could narrow it down to say 2018. All right, so there's 11,000 articles that have cited this theory since 2018. It looks like it's still being used. That's great. If we wanted to see how far it goes back, I know we saw some articles from the 70s, so we could just say like we'll say 1980. So if you click on custom range, you can enter in a date range to help you narrow down your results list based on the actual publication date. I'm doing this, so I'm kind of going into the past by saying the newest resources, the newest they can be is 1980. So we're going to do it that way. So, you can take a look at in here and figure out, well, who cited it, what are the dates? And one of the tricky things about Google Scholar is some of these entries are they're not perfect. I think it's one of those things where if you're able to use the encyclopedias to get more context, that is probably the best way to go. But if you're trying to get that, how has it changed over time? Who's the original? How long did they talk about it for? This is a great way to do it. So one of the articles that we had noticed before was this particular theorist. So if we wanted to see, so this is kind of a shortcut that you can do in Google Scholar. So if you type in author colon and then the author's last name, it's going to search for that author's name in the Google Scholar results list. So now we only have articles that discuss social identity published by this author since 1980 or 1980 previous. I'm not going to say that it does a perfect job of doing that. Actually, let's make it HT. Maybe that's why it's not showing everything. It can be kind of finicky. Nope. Okay. So you can search by the author too if you want to figure out, okay, well, they published in 1979, 1978. I saw that there was an article from 1974. But maybe they didn't discuss social identity specifically. So let's see everything that particular author did. And so we've got a lot of entries for this particular author from 1980 and before. So you can go and look at it this way too. So there's a lot of different ways you can research your theory when you're in Google Scholar. And hopefully I'm not missing any questions here. Okay, good. I don't think I did. All right, so again, if you wanted to look at social identity theory, and And we're going to look at our topic because we were looking at employee turnover. And the only reason I'm using labor turnover is because that's another term that the databases like to use. And let's get rid of that date range too. That would help. All right, so using social identity theory, employee turnover or labor turnover, we've got about 2,500 results, and that's a pretty good list. So sometimes when you're in the databases, you'll hit a dead end because before how did we search in here? So we had 11, right? And that can seem like there's not a lot out there on your topic using that theory, and that's not necessarily the case. The only issue when you're searching the database is that you're getting piecemeal. So this database only has so many articles about employee turnover and social identity theory. But when you're in Google Scholar, using Google Scholar to search for theory gives you the big picture, which can be very, very helpful and give you more context for how much is actually out there. So again, if you just wanted to see what was most recent out there, we'll say 2016. Change our date range, and we've got 822 articles to search through. So then, once you're in here, for those of you who have not used Google Scholar, if anybody wants me to walk through how to link Google Scholar to the Walden Library, I can certainly do that. I tend to save that for my intro and my DBA Lit Review webinar. But if anybody hasn't watched those or doesn't know how to link Google Scholar to the Walden Library, I'd be happy to show you how to do that. So once you find an article that's of interest to you, you'll click on the Find at Walden, and then it'll load for you and just say, okay, this article is available in this database. You'll click on the database, and eventually will load. Oh, good, excellent. It's probably good for you guys to see. That happens to me too. I should point out that so when you get this message, it doesn't necessarily mean we don't have access to that article. It just means the background software that works between Google Scholar and the Walden Library isn't able to match up. And so it's saying, hey, it's not working, or there's no full text, and that's not necessarily the case. So we'll come back to that in a minute because there are some requests to show you guys how to connect Google Scholar to the Walden Library. So in the upper left-hand corner, you're going to click on this 3 horizontal bar, and then you're going to click on Settings, and then Library Links, and then you can just type in Walden. You don't have to worry about university at all. It'll search and find for it. It doesn't need to be in there. So Walden's fine. Click Search. And then you'll see Open WorldCat if you're in the United States. If you're outside the US, it might not be there. You might have a different resource. It's just there to help you find more stuff. And then you're going to check mark Walden University Library, find Walden, and hit Save. So I'll walk through that one more time because I know that was kind of quick, but I do want to save time to demo that student's theory because I think it's good for you guys to see me walk through it when it's not something I've pre-programmed so you guys can see how that works. All right, so again, through the 3 horizontal bar, we're going to click on Settings and Library Links, type in Walden, hit Search, and then check mark Walden University Library, find it Walden, hit Save. And then you'll see the Find it Waldens pop up to the right. And the reason I bring that up is because whenever you click on the title, it's going to take you to the publisher and they're going to ask you for payment. We don't want you to do that. So make sure you either access the articles through Find it Walden or the open source PDFs you see on the right-hand side. So hopefully everybody got through that. If you need me to send you an email afterwards with steps, put that in the questions box and then I'll email you directly after the webinar. And that way you can do it step by step, once it's done. Because I do want to show the demo of this other theory. I just had to go find it in the inbox here. Okay, so the theory they have is behavioral leadership theory. All right, so hopefully this didn't time out on me. So let's start. By searching in the database. Nothing. Okay. I'm just going to make sure I type that in correctly. Behavioral leadership theory. All right. So it might be something where maybe I made a typo, or maybe it's something where it's something that tends to be used in psychology or another area more often. So let's go check out how much there is in Google Scholar on that topic. So just looking for this specific theory, there's 370. So that's not, I would say that's just that results list is fine. If you wanted to see how much content there is related to that theory in like the last 4 or 5 years, you could change your date range, and now we're down to about 100. We can give it a try and see if there is content on this in the encyclopedia. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm always curious to see if there's going to be content in there. Okay, so let's replace the one I have in there and rerun the search. Oh, right, it's there. Just kind of blocked by my console for the webinar. Okay, so there's nothing in Sage Knowledge. So that's not a problem. It just means that it's, we might have to find, maybe we could search by the author name, or if there's a related theory that might discuss it a little bit too, we might be able to do that. The next thing I would do, again, is look at the dissertation. So we can look at Walden specifically. And I think I still have this open, so we'll just go back a couple pages here. And let's alter our search. So behavioral leadership theory, and hit search. All right. So it looks like we have one dissertation that discusses that specific theory. So I'm going to open up that full text. And I didn't look in Google Scholar to see how old the citations for it were, but this will be helpful for that anyway. All right, so we could look at the theoretical conceptual framework section first, and then come down here and see if they have any other entries for that particular theory. So page 6. Great. All right. So it's going to discuss at some point a little bit about that information, although I'm not seeing any citations initially, but I'm sure there's more in here. I'm not going to spend too much time scrolling through it, but this is exactly how I would narrow it down. I would see how much is out there on that theory. I would look to see if there's more context for that theory in Sage Knowledge, and then I would come back to the dissertations and figure out exactly how many people have used it, and then look at their references. So let's try searching for this. I'm going to try searching for it in the global dissertations database. That way we might get some more hits. So theory title, and just make sure when you're in the global dissertations database that you click on doctoral dissertations, just because this particular database has both the a master's thesis and the doctoral dissertations. So I just want to make sure that you're limit it to stuff that's going to be relevant to you. And it looks like we've got 248, but honestly, I only see 2 of them highlighted with that particular theory in their abstract. So my guess is that the ones after the first 2 may or may not have that theory in there, but these definitely do. So that's kind of how I would search for that particular theory. We've already found the Walden dissertation, which is great. And it looks like there's one from National Louis University. So all right, we have got 6 minutes left, so I will give you guys a minute to type in any questions you might have. If you want me to use that last 6 minutes to walk through the Google Scholar linking one more time, I think you guys, somebody wanted me to do it one more time. So if you still want me to go through linking Google Scholar to Walden Library, again, I'm happy to do it one more time. If you have a different question, feel free to put that in the questions box. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have if it's related to using Google Scholar or searching through the databases. And if you have any follow-up questions, my email address will be attached to the follow-up email you guys get tomorrow. Oh, that's a good question. So the question was, does the library have a set form we should follow for our searches for our dissertation? So no, there's not like you have to start here and end here. You know, researching is all over the board because there isn't just one topic they're going to be researching, right? You could be researching employee turnover, but you'll also be researching your topic with a certain methodology or with a particular theory, or you're using a specific you might be doing a case study, so you're going to look for articles with case studies. So there's all sorts of ways that you're going to be, all these different topics, all these different databases you could be using. So if you're curious about research strategies in general, I would look at our recorded webinars because those are really, really great for that content. And then let's see if there was any, oh, okay. And then the last thing that said somebody here was that, can we have a recording? Yes, absolutely. So everybody who's registered will get a follow-up email in the next 24 hours. That'll include a link to the recording. It'll also include a link to that business theory guide so that you don't have to try and find it again in the library. I know it's a lot of steps and it would be pretty easy to forget by tomorrow. I know where it lives because I made it, but I don't expect you guys to have memorized that. So after the webinar is done, just know that you guys will be prompted for a survey. You're not required to take it. It's just to say, hey, Audrey did a great job with this, or she could have done this better. And just know that's totally fine. I am awesome with pro comments or critical comments. Both of them hopefully are going to make me a better presenter and get you the information you need. And the last questions about those paid articles, can you get those for us if needed? So if you see something that's asking you for payment, grab the citation and email the library and we'll try and find it for you in full text. So I think that was the last question that came in. Thank you so much, you guys, for coming in on a break today or in your afternoon or in your evening. So just depending on your time zone. So thanks again. And I look forward to seeing you guys in future webinars.